Hey everybody, it's Ben and Beta here, and I have a special treat this evening. This is Luke. Hello, Luke.
Hello.
And it's ever so special because Luke is a former both student and athlete of mine when I was teaching at Winneconne in Wisconsin. It seems like an awful long time, but maybe it's not that long.
Really does.
About 10 years, right? So that's where we're at this point. So, yeah.
We're dating ourselves.
We are a little bit. We are. But Luke was always, honestly, probably one of my favorite students and athletes I've ever coached or taught ever in my entire 14-year career as a teacher. So it was kind of fun to see Luke reach out and say, hey, I have a bunch of experience with some building out a vehicle and some overlanding. I'd love to come on and talk about it. And I thought, well, let's do that. It sounds good to me. So yeah, I would like to thank Luke for coming on today.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So we have we're going to talk a little bit about Luke's build. We're going to talk, have Luke give us some suggestions on what I might do once I actually get my Tacoma and what I can do with it there. And then we'll talk about like what else Luke might be looking at for a future vehicle for himself as well. So it's kind of going to be a jam-packed episode, but that's cool. Remember that you can always leave comments, and we'll do our best to answer those if you put them up. So I guess we'll get started here. Just a couple house cleaning items. Got a new video series starting tomorrow on some DIY detailing stuff that I've been doing for a long time. And I just wanted to share a review of some of the products that I use. So that'll be up tomorrow. And then I'll be actually doing a full-up video when I get the Tacoma of actually ceramic coating that vehicle and all the products that I use and like the process that I use, which has all been grabbed from YouTube, from somewhere else. But, you know, it does take a little bit of time to learn some of those things. Ceramic coating is easy, but it's different than like waxing your car for sure. So I'm kind of excited about that series. I have a collaboration that I can't talk about just yet, but I'm excited to announce in a little while. So that'll be coming up shortly as well. And then just an update on the Tacoma. It's still in Denver. I drove through the lot today just to check to see if it just magically got dropped off, but it's not there. So not sure how long it'll be. It was supposed to be delivered sometime between the 3rd and the 8th this week, but I suspect it may miss that date. And there's been a few more people on the forums reporting some issues with. So there are basically some louvers on the front of the Tacomas that like adjust for airflow. And there's a connector that supposedly it's either not connected right from the factory. In some cases may have gotten wet for some people. And that's actually just causing all kinds of error messages, and people have had to take their vehicles in for that several times. So like that's a pretty minor thing. But more people are reporting that. And I'm not sure if it's both factories or just one factory. So that'll be interesting to see if more people post on that. Kind of interested to find out what's going on there. But you know what? It's a brand new platform, basically, a brand new vehicle. So it's going to have problems, but that's what warranties are for. So, right? So, Luke, you want to talk a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into let you share a little bit about your vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about myself. I'm in the state of Wisconsin, so I'm a little bit farther away from Ben here. But my overlanding journey, believe it or not, actually started in optometry school, of all places. So I was about halfway through my optometry school journey just before COVID. And, you know, going to a school like that, it's kind of a tough road. You kind of dedicate your whole life to doing that career path, and you have to sacrifice a lot while you're going to school. And I had essentially given up all my hobbies. And one of my hobbies is working on vehicles and kind of wrenching on vehicles. And right before COVID hit, I saw this 1999 LX 470 on Craigslist. And it looked like too good of a deal to pass up. So last minute of my winter break, I went and took a look at it, and might have made a little bit of a spur of the moment purchase, but got myself a rusty vehicle. Wish I would have had that warranty.
Well, you know, when you're buying used, it is what it is. You got to expect something, right? Especially,
yeah, you got to shake the dice every now and again.
So let's take a look at what your vehicle looks like and what you've done to it, and you can just talk us through your build a little bit. I think that'll be super.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of back up the bus here in these photos. And basically, I bought this very, very quickly. And if we kind of look at some of the early photos here, when I first got it home, just looking at it, looks pretty darn nice. Clean paint, all that good stuff. And I probably should have taken a little bit more time looking underneath it. So as soon as I was going to start some maintenance on it, I found out the frame was very, very rusty. And very rusty is an understatement. Everything else on the vehicle was fantastic, but I was poking holes in my frame with a screwdriver. And that's not good news. And anybody who knows Toyotas kind of knows that this is an issue that's plagued them in the past.
So you're saying in this case, you definitely got the vehicle that you wanted in terms of working on something. You got a project for this with this one.
Yeah, one could say I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, but we just took it one step at a time here.
Yeah.
So, shortly after I bought this, COVID hit, and I had a little bit more free time on my hands with school, and I had it in my mind that I wanted to swap frames on this thing because everything else was really beautiful about it. Everything was in really good shape. The engine and the driveline were fantastic. So I got a frame all the way from Florida that I don't know the entire history of the vehicle that it came off of, but it was an immaculate frame, and had it delivered via freight. And I did this all in my grandma's shed on weekends in optometry school. And slowly but surely kind of picked it apart here. And basically at the end of the whole thing, I had the goal of taking a big trip at the end of optometry school to really celebrate. So as I'm kind of scrolling through these pictures here, you can see me really disassembling the whole thing. I mean, even here, the engine is dangling from tractor pallet forks, trying to get this old frame out from underneath, and all sorts of rust remediation in the process. So throughout the process, I really got to know this vehicle super well. Super well.
So when you, after you kind of completed the necessary, I can't even use this vehicle until I've got a new frame and everything's on top of that. What are some of the other things that you did after that? So from stock, what did you do to build out the vehicle? Why did you do some of those things? Are there any of those things that you did? You were like, you know what? I probably didn't need to do that in retrospect, but, and then which ones were like, these were bang for my buck, the best things that I did for my time and buck?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's kind of unique about a lot of the Lexus platforms is they had a hydraulic suspension system, which very robust, very reliable, but after 25 years, it was pretty well shot. So when you're in the process of replacing that, that's the time to do a lift, make the vehicle a little bit taller. And one of the things I learned, Ironman is a very popular place to get some aftermarket parts here, and I ended up going with an Ironman kit. And because I was in school, kind of going with all the budget-friendly options for a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
And certainly not anything of poor quality by any means. I've been very happy with the ride that it provided and all that stuff. But I think for things like that, spending a little bit more on the ride and the comfort of the vehicle goes a long ways to enjoying it every day, because I've completed this now and I really daily drive it. And I'll find a picture here of some suspension. This was chronologically ordered at some point, but you can see here, while the whole thing is apart, it's at its easiest point to replace a lot of these things, wear bushings and all that stuff. Diving into overlanding with a used vehicle is significantly different because you're taking it out into the middle of nowhere. You need to be really, really confident that it's going to get you there and back. Right.
I'm not sure the Tacoma is going to get me there and back, and it's brand new.
Growing pains, right? Growing pains.
That's right.
One of the things that I also added was, changing wheel size because, tires are super important to what you're doing off-road, and, finding a flexible rim size. You wouldn't think about the rim as being an important part of deciding what tires to go with, but certain rim sizes only have a certain amount of tire availability. So I ended up finding some 17-inch rims that worked well for me and that were a nice find on Facebook Marketplace. And basically that gave me access to use basically any all-terrain tires that a Jeep would use, because a 17-inch rim is the standard size for most Jeep products, and there's tons of those on the road. So
what brand did you end up with there?
For tires, I ended up with General Grabber ATXs.
Okay.
And kind of landed on those for a couple different reasons. I'm in Wisconsin, so I need that 3-peak snow rating, and I've been very impressed with them in the snow. It's a heavy vehicle that I'm driving, so making sure you have the right load range for those tires,
Yep.
super important to not only the safety of yourself, but for others. So I went with a load range E because I knew I was going to be adding a lot of extra weight to my vehicle. So kind of accounting for that ahead of time. I've been very happy with the performance on and off road with those tires, and I would definitely recommend them as a decent option on a medium budget, right?
Nice.
Not something you always want to skimp on here. One of the modifications that I did in the process as well was add a front bumper, because a lot of the supports that were originally mounting it, had kind of rusted off on the old one. So, finding a new bumper support from Toyota, you might as well just upgrade to a bull bar.
Yep.
So I'll jump ahead to a photo of that. And honestly, that's probably one of the modifications that I made in the process that was it gave me the most peace of mind, because, I don't know what the deer situation is like in Colorado necessarily, but smashing your recently completed restored vehicle into a deer and ruining the whole thing was not an idea that I enjoyed. So, getting a nice sturdy bumper certainly adds weight, but I think it was a very worthwhile venture to just protect your investment,
Yep.
And I went with an ARB one for that, and
Nice.
10 out of 10 would recommend it. Unbelievable quality, fit, finish, all of the above. And I have the utmost confidence that worst case scenario, if I bumped into a deer, wouldn't be the end of my vehicle.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
If you notice in this picture too, I have a winch on it, and that's another one of those things that gives you extraordinary peace of mind.
Right.
Being out in the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to go crazy with them. I went with a Harbor Freight one. They're Badlands one. You probably see Matt's Off-Road Recovery use those.
Yeah, they're good. They're good winches.
They're fantastic. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if you want me to go into a little bit more gear here.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Like, what are the things that, again, I think, what are the top 2 or 3 things you've purchased and you're like, I love this? And what are the top 2 or 3 things you're like, I've either replaced it or I would replace it or I wouldn't buy it at all?
Yeah. Another one of the things on the interior of the vehicle, I don't know if I have a picture of it necessarily here, is upgrading my head unit to a CarPlay unit. Being able to stream Onyx maps when you're not within cell signal, priceless. Absolutely priceless. At least being able to goat trail your way back when you're traveling through mazes of forest roads and stuff like that, I think is really, really important to be able to see where you are and know where you're going.
I agree.
In terms of the camping side of the things, one of the best things I found, and this was an Amazon open box find, and don't be scared of the Amazon open boxes because this thing was in perfect shape. Camp stove.
Yeah.
Camp stove. This Everest one, absolutely blown away by the power of it, the versatility of it, and everything. And I made a drawer system in the back of my truck to, hold all this equipment and all that stuff, and it fits in there just beautifully.
And you sleep in your vehicle?
Yes, currently. But, after doing that for a little while, it's certainly manageable.
Yep.
It's certainly manageable if you're one person. Anything more than that, and I think a rooftop tent or a trailer is a far more comfortable route to go.
One person and a dog, maybe even. That's about as far as you can push it.
Exactly. And, rooftop tents, you're spending a little bit more money for those. So that's one of those things that to start overlanding, you don't need right away. But as you get more experienced, you learn what you like and what you need. That's one of those comfort items, we'll call it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what, we did in the Tucson in the last year was, we were overlanding in that. And obviously we weren't able to go to as crazy places with that, but we were sleeping in it. And the 2 of us by ourselves would have been fine. We always had the dog with, and so made it harder. And then when I was by myself with the dog, it was perfect. I slept great. But one of the things I hated was I had to take all of my stuff out, and then I had to put all my stuff in, and then I had to take all my stuff out. And I had to put all my stuff in, and so rooftop tent, I can just go to sleep whenever I want. It doesn't matter. So that's gonna be great.
Yeah, Ben, did you do any tent camping?
When we were younger, we did a lot of tent camping. So we used to do that quite a bit when we were younger. But as we've gotten older, especially Misty, she's had a lot of issues with her back, like a ton. The last real tent camping we did was some backpacking, and neither one of us slept very well. And we learned at that point, backpacking wasn't our thing. We want to get out in the wilderness. We want to hike, but we would like to sleep in comfort. So yeah.
Absolutely. And the reason I ask is because one of the things that I found, traveling from Wisconsin out west is, along the way you're stopping at campsites, more traditional spots versus overlanding campsites on the way out. And most of them won't allow you to sleep out of the back of your vehicle. So I found myself being equipped with a tent and worst case scenario, pitching that in certain situations. And that's where those rooftop tents really, really show their value, because you have the same sleeping situation every night, which is honestly invaluable.
Yeah. And the hub tents are pretty good too, I would say. Like those are at least you can toss them up in like 2 seconds and go to sleep in those too. So if I was going to do a tent, I'd probably do something like that.
Exactly. Like kind of one of those ice fishing ones almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're like the gazelle tents. Brian has talked about those a couple. He was really looking into one of those, and then ended up going with his Intrepid tent instead. But yeah. Anything else that you really like, or you want to switch to things that you were like, oh, I wouldn't do this?
One of the things, wheels, tires, that's kind of your starting point, right? A lot of things become luxury items. One of the other things that I did was a dual battery system.
Yeah.
And, Jackery boxes and stuff like that have become very popular these days. But I also like the redundancy of a dual battery system.
Sure.
It's a little bit of equipment. It's a little bit of setup. Not always a DIY project for a lot of people, but, having the ability with, only a little $70 box that I'm kind of showing in this picture here.
Yep.
It gives me the ability to use my secondary battery to jumpstart my main battery should I run things too low.
Sure.
And, it does a really good job in making sure you don't lose too much power. I have a fridge in my vehicle. Another one of those things that is invaluable, not having to worry about ice.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But the downside is you got to have a dual battery system if you're staying any more than 24 hours in the same place.
Yeah, so one difference is, and this will be interesting for us to contrast our builds as we do them. We're not doing a dual battery system. We will be going with one of like the solar battery setup, and we've done that. That's what we've run so far with. And I've only run the fridge back and forth to Wisconsin, and the car was on the whole time, so it didn't really matter anyway. But I'm doing a lot of calculations on how much power I need, and I have a couple of pretty good ideas of what I'm looking at there, because I don't really want to build the whole dual battery system out in the vehicle. So it'll be an interesting contrast to see how that works out between dual battery and not dual battery. And I'll be doing a lot of solar charging. The big thing I need to figure out is if I'm going to put in, they have, I forget what the company is, but I was just watching some videos on it, but it attaches to your battery, but it's not an inverter. It's still DC, but it allows you to charge like 300 watts or whatever while you're moving. And so if I can do that, there's really all I need. Like, I'll be able to charge up my battery pretty quickly that way. So between even 200 watts, I'd probably be plenty. And even with, you look at some of the batteries out there, like they're actually 3,000 watt hour batteries. I mean, that's several days of power right there for sure.
Absolutely.
Even if you didn't do anything else. So I'm actually looking at something that's closer to like 1,000 watts. I have a 500 watt battery right now, which is what we'll probably use for a little while, and then probably upgrade to one of the Blue Yetis. That's like 1,000 watts, and then we're going to add on that one. You can add on additional batteries if you need to. So if we needed more, we could do that. But that's where we're going to start. So it's and I can use it at home. So because I use those, I actually use my battery every day at home to charge all of my stuff.
Oh, fantastic!
So I'm trying to do it like dual purpose, right, and see how that goes.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of new overlanders kind of forget about is the capacity of not only your charging system of your vehicle and your battery capacity of your vehicle. Everybody wants more lights, more accessories, more everything. But you need to be really cognizant of just how much power you're pulling out of your batteries, because the last thing you want to do is fry wiring and fry batteries in the middle of nowhere trying to light up your camp.
Agreed. Cool. Any other last things you want to share about your build out or your trip or any of that kind of stuff?
So in regards to my build, so I ended up actually tearing my engine apart twice.
Oh yeah, sure did.
Yeah. So after I finished it, because it was so rusty, the gasket that holds the pistons to the cylinder head actually rusted out from the outside. So I had an external head gasket leak. And that may not mean something to a lot of people, but to me, that meant a lot of work. And the first time I did it, I tried doing it without taking the engine out. And yeah, wouldn't recommend that. I wasn't successful, so I got to do it again. And the second time, I got to take it out. And I definitely see the value in your warranty here, Ben.
Yeah.
Definitely see the value in that. So, you know, as these vehicles get a little older, a little longer in the tooth, you know, I'll probably be looking at changing my platform, because my brother got a GX460 and we did a whole bunch of modifications to that. And that is a wonderful platform to work off of. I'll see if I can find some photos of that here. Let's see. But I will say I was successful at the end of my trip. I did not burn any oil. I did not use any fluids in a 5,000-mile trip out west to Glacier. And Glacier was my maiden voyage here, and was an excellent test for everything that I had done, and was my first dive into really learning what I need and what I don't need when I'm overlanding.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's pretty
beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, in terms of gear and stuff, it's one of those things where it's very individual based. You got to go out there and you need to learn what you have and what you don't have.
Yep.
I took a very all-in approach, and I probably got more things than I needed. You know, more supplies.
Brian and I have been saying the same thing. Like, we're new, right? I took him out when he was here in October in the Tucson, and then he started building things out from there. And I started from a mid, like just a on the road SUV basically, and like a lot of people do, like in Subarus or RAV4s or whatever it is, or like the 4Runner is a lot more capable, I would say, than those. But yeah, I mean, you just learn, and you have to know, like, what am I comfortable with? And so my recommendation is what you did here is you build your vehicle and you knew you could handle that, right? And I think that's totally fine. But if you're not sure if you want to get into it, go for a weekend or a night somewhere. Learn what you have and what you don't have, and then start making a list of things of, like, this worked, this didn't. Oh, I forgot this thing, and that's kind of important, right? And then you can kind of figure things out from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, couple other questions, I guess. Then, we talked a little bit about the fact that I'm getting a Tacoma, and last week we talked with Tim from Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and he kind of said, don't get any, don't, you don't need to buy anything, just go overlanding. And I was like, I still think tires might be kind of important. And I'm thinking some rock rails. I think those are the two upgrades I'm thinking of right away. Like, those are the two things I want to do. And I think for peace of mind, and a lot of it is just peace of mind. It like you said, like, you have a winch. Have you used it? I don't know. Maybe you have, but if you haven't, it's just there, right? Like, if you need it, it's there. And some of it's peace of mind for sure. So what do you think I should do with the Tacoma? What are the first few things I should do? And what are some things you think don't spend money on this until you've figured this out, or at all?
Yeah. Skid plates. That's one of those things that I see a lot of people just dive into and feel like they need immediately. And that's one of those things that adds a lot of weight to your vehicle. It's a fair amount of cost. And unless you're doing some pretty serious rock crawling and you're really pushing the limits of your vehicle, for your average overlander, what comes from the factory is probably going to be good enough for most situations. When you find that you're starting to scrape on things more than just your rock rails and stuff like that, that's when you start making the dive into those skid plates, because not only does it make maintenance a little bit more difficult on your vehicle, but again, more weight. More weight.
Yeah, the Tacoma has they used to have, I think, aluminum skid plates, and now they're like a composite material. So it's something, right? At least I'm not smashing metal on rock. It'll be rock onto plastic of some type, and we'll see how well they hold up. And if they fall off, then it's time to get something better, right? So
exactly. And I haven't put mine in a point yet where I feel like I need skid plates. And I've gone some pretty remote places with this thing. You mentioned tires, though, and I think one of the things that a lot of people forget, and this was a situation I ran into on my trip out in Glacier, was, okay, you have tires, you upgraded your tires. Now what happens if you get a flat? Yep. You got to have some way to, in the middle of nowhere, if you get a flat, inflate a tire, patch a tire, something like that. So even a simple, battery powered tire inflator and a $5 tire patch kit can go a long ways to saving your butt, and making sure you can get your tire off. I ran into a gentleman in a big Infinity SUV in the middle of nowhere who, ran into a flat, and he had the spare tire. It wasn't inflated, and he didn't have the right tools to get the lug nuts off of his vehicle. So he ended up ruining them. And luckily, I was in a position where I had an air compressor in my vehicle. I was able to stop on the side of the road, air him back up, and make sure he got out of his situation safely. And
Nice.
honestly, who knows how long he would have been out there
Right.
if I hadn't wandered along.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So I do have I already have a tire repair kit, so we're good there.
Good.
I do have a cheapo tire inflator, so that DC powered, so that'll work. But so there is a the new Tacoma has the option for that built-in air compressor, high output air compressor, and it's supposed to originally the premiums were supposed to come with that.
Mm-hmm.
I asked my dealer very specifically, does this come with this? They went to some site on Toyota and they said, yes, it does. Since that time, we found out it doesn't. So I think I'm going to be working with my dealer to work through Toyota. Like it's not the dealer's fault; it's Toyota's fault. Essentially, is what's going on. And so, but they did say it was going to come with it. So, and they told my dealer it was going to come with it. So hopefully, I'm going to get Toyota to pay for that onboard air compressor in the bed. That would be sweet. And if not, I'll either use that one that I got, or I'll probably look at like a Morphlite one or something like that, which I think those are pretty nice. And just to have that. But I mean, 100%, I'll be carrying that, no doubt, because I'm probably not going to start with a winch. Again, weight, it's just heavy, and I have to replace my bumper, and like I don't want to do that if I don't need to. If I did a winch, I would consider maybe a hitch mounted winch too. I could do it that way, and then at least I have something. But again, you're carrying around 100 pounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you got to think of the impact on fuel economy too.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a big wind dam at the front.
Yeah.
And there's a certain order of operations that you follow. You can't just throw a winch on and throw a bumper on and not address suspension.
Right. Exactly.
So there's a process you kind of have to follow here. And one thing has to come before the other.
I mean, and Misty does not want to spend a lot of extra money if we don't have to either. So this will be we're going to keep the vehicle for a long time. So we'll figure out what we need as we go along. But I definitely want to start with, like, again, peace of mind for me is tires, because if I can avoid it getting cut, that's the best case scenario. And then if it does, I do have, I'd have a way to repair it. So it's not too big of a deal, but
exactly.
And also I think too, just like when you do get in a situation, having better tires will help with that, versus, what TFL did to their truck already.
Yeah. So do we know exactly what they broke on their truck? Because I saw that video too. They snapped something.
Nope. So they the latest news that I saw on the Tacoma 4G forums, and they have a partnership with TFL. So they reached out to TFL and said, hey, what's going on? Because they were going to make more videos. They had said they were going to go and put it on a lift and see if they could figure out what was wrong with it. That video never came out. They took it to the dealer, and they said within an hour they had shipped the whole front differential and the axle and everything, and just shipped the whole thing to Toyota to check it out. So to be determined, I think at this point. I don't, and I wouldn't know enough to know what was. I mean, people are like CV, it could be a differential, it could be lots of different things, and who knows. So
and I've blown up a differential already too. So these things do happen, no matter how reliable or how well built the vehicle is. If you put it in the wrong situation, things will break.
And that's the only one that I've heard of that's done that. I've seen lots of other issues so far, but they're mostly they're electrical, or they're, the infotainment systems acting funny, that kind of stuff. But that's the biggest mechanical thing I think I've seen. And, the hard part is because they have the stops, this QC hole, there's only maybe 1,500 that are actually out in people's hands at the moment. So it's a pretty small set. And again, the people who are reporting problems is also pretty small. So it looks big because it's 3 people reported this problem, but it's 3 people out of 1,500 is a pretty small amount, So it's hard. People blow all that stuff up, and Tim has said that before too. When people like blow up an engine issue or a lifter issue or whatever it is, I'm like, oh, everything has this problem. It's like 200 of them had this problem. They decided to do a recall to fix this. So like it's a recall of 700,000 vehicles or whatever, but it's only like 10 that actually had the problem. They're just making sure, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, the reputation that Toyota has for reliability precedes it. And when something does go wrong, people are really going to shine a bright light on it. So
yeah, exactly. People who want to hate are going to hate.
Exactly.
And you also know the engineers are all watching every single one of those videos, and they're like, "Oh man, we got to figure out what's going on here because this can't happen again," right? So
yeah.
So thanks. That's good advice. That's where we're going to start, and I think it'll be cool. You're welcome, by the way, to come on on this or do some other videos and any other collabs that you want, as much as you want. So whether it's about Brian and I, if you want to hop on whatever. People with experience are great because we can talk through things like what about this. I think Brian would have a lot of questions for you, so I think I would definitely bring you back on for that too.
Awesome.
He's a Jeep guy, so he's got a Jeep, and I think it'd be super interesting for that too because he might. What should I do with my Jeep is probably his question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he likes to tinker too, and I do too. Like I don't have a lot of mechanical experience. Like when you were in high school, what I remember about you was like you were in the tech ed rooms doing all kinds of you were into something all the time.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of experience with that. I've changed tires, I've changed oil, I've done some things on vehicles, but I don't have a lot of experience with it. So when things come up, I'm like, should I do this myself or not? I don't know. Like one of the things that I really would like to do to this Tacoma is the Trail Hunter has a trail dump exhaust. And that's gonna and if you notice the one on the off-road is like not at a good place. It's massive. It's like I just want to get rid of that. So if my dog, hey Roop. So if I can get the trail dump exhaust and put that on there, it's gonna save weight, which is whether it's 25 or 50 pounds, a little bit, but it's something. But then I don't have to bang that on anything, which is great. But I'm like, can I do that myself? It's supposed to be bolt on. Probably, maybe I can, maybe I can't. I'm not sure, but it would be interesting to try.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. You got to start with the small stuff, and you work your way up to it.
Yep.
You don't go tearing an engine out the first thing you do. You start with an oil change.
Actually, one of the questions I had for you, this is a good one. You were just talking about tools, and my dog has decided she wants to be petted, so that's what I have to do here. That's the most important thing in my life at the moment. So you talked about tools a little bit. So let me talk to you about what I'm thinking. So I mean, I have my tool set from when my dad gave it to me when I turned 16 or something like that, right? I still have that. So I do have a ratchet set. It is older than the hills. It is probably some Walmart version, and that's fine. So what I'm thinking actually is buying a nice set of, this is Toyota, a nice metric socket set deep and shallow. Having one, pretty good, maybe 3/8 inch. I think for that stuff, maybe that's big enough. I can go 1/2 inch. I don't know. Maybe you'll recommend which way I should go there. Having a really nice ratchet, whether that is an Icon or something from Harbor Freight, just one really nice ratchet. And then same thing with a torque wrench. And then I want to get like a torque screwdriver so I can do like the smaller things, like they're like 5 Newton meters and that kind of thing. Something like on my rack, there's a lot of things that need those kinds of things. So basically that, something for a breaker bar, like, either on the ratchet or a breaker bar itself. And beyond that, I'm not sure what else I should really carry. Because you see that all these people are packing on, they got 15, and maybe a screwdriver, like a ratcheting screwdriver and a small, bit set or something like that. Like that's kind of what I'm thinking I want to carry as my sort of toolkit. I've seen some people who have lots and lots of stuff, but I'm like, you know what? I want to say, I don't want it to be 50 pounds. I want it to be like 10 pounds if I can make it that. So what do you recommend?
You're on the right track there. And maybe a little teaser in the future here. I would love to show you what I have in the back of mine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have it at about 15 to 20 pounds is what I think I could narrow it down to. And I'm a huge believer in Harbor Freight tools. I think, especially for DIYers, if you're not doing it every single day, it's going to get the job done. So I'd be happy to take you through my tool setup, and it's not too far off of what you're saying. You're on the right track there. But
yeah, I think we should do that. Maybe we'll do that. And I don't know if it would be a live video, if it would be better to do that like pre-recorded or something like that. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing. Maybe we could do both. I'm not sure. We could figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. So those are the things I'm thinking about right now as I'm about to hop into that. But I think, just watching different people, I'm like, I think this is kind of where I want to be. So yeah,
absolutely.
All right, so I promised we talk about what you're thinking about next. So let me throw up my screen here really quick.
Yes.
And so this is kind of where you're thinking. So not brand new, but new to
Nope.
you.
Nope. And I have the 100 series Land Cruiser, which kind of ran from 1998 to 2007. And then the 200 series Land Cruiser kind of came after that. And, everything's an incremental improvement in most situations, right? The big advantages I see with this platform over mine is it's the same exact wheelbase, same exact length, but it has more power. That's number one. Pulling mountain passes, approaching your max payload. In a 25-year-old vehicle, you're pushing it pretty hard. And, something like this, I'd be pushing it a lot easier. There's great aftermarket support on a vehicle like this. And Land Cruiser has the reputation of just being the utmost in reliability, the utmost in quality. And, my dad has a Tundra, my brother has a GX, and even among Toyota enthusiasts, they'd be fair to admit that a Land Cruiser is just a little bit better built than even the other popular Toyota vehicles. And I can certainly attest to that after taking one apart myself. So in the future, this would be kind of the platform that I would look into, because not only does it have great payload, great towing, good power, and a nice aftermarket support and reliability. And those are kind of the things that I look for, and this has.
Yeah, somebody wrote in one of the comments on the forums, we were talking some of this stuff through, and they said, in Australia, or I don't know where they're like in Africa, if you want to go somewhere, you take a Land Rover. If you want to get back, you take a Land Cruiser.
Exactly. And the cool part about the Land Cruiser platform specifically, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with your Tacoma platform, because now every Toyota vehicle is essentially on a Land Cruiser platform, but that's a different discussion.
Right.
But the aftermarket support on a global platform and a global vehicle is really, really cool, because you can get input from people all across the world in terms of
that'd be awesome.
what to do and what not to do.
So one last question, just because I'm sure you never get this, but do you prefer this one or this one? As an optometrist joke.
One or two.
One or two.
Or about the same.
The same? Yeah.
I think one.
That was fun. I had a good time. I definitely want to have you back, Luke. I appreciate you and your time and coming on tonight. And I look forward to a few more episodes showing Brian and I what we need to get for tools. I think that'll be amazing. So
absolutely, Ben. This was an absolute blast. I appreciate letting me crash your platform.
Anytime, you're 100% welcome. And you know what? If you ever want to plan a trip out to Colorado and do some overlanding, I'm 100% game. Anytime you want.
Awesome. We'll be in touch.
All right, sounds good. Thanks everybody for watching. Remember, live your life in beta, and we'll see you next time.